Okay, Microsoft Graph. So Microsoft Graph is a gateway to the data and intelligence in Microsoft 365. It provides a unified programming model that we can use to access the tremendous amount of data in Microsoft 365, Windows 10, and enterprise mobility security. So here's the diagram. Using Graph, we can get access to Microsoft's 365 document portals. We can build our own experience. We can get access to Windows 10s and enterprise mobility. So benefit of Microsoft Graph is like using one API, we can get access to all the objects inside the Microsoft Office, and we can do some custom programming. This is a page is talking about using one REST API, we can get email addresses, user information. One very important thing is this Graph Explorer. So this Graph Explorer is very good to find out what are the permissions you need for getting, like if you're trying to get my profile. So what kind of response you would get, and uh, let's see the particular, go to the users. So it's showing this is there are 90 90 users uh, under users. So, okay, get my direct reports. You can find out what are the possibilities, what kind of queries you can run using Microsoft Graph, what permissions you would need. So coming back to ours. So how to use Microsoft Graph using in C Sharp. So there is a Microsoft Graph.NET SDK. So we can use a client, Microsoft Graph client. So let me run a demo. So before I can write some C Sharp application, I have to set up the access. So I am creating a resource group so that I can create Microsoft Entra ID. I can set up all the authentication information so that I can retrieve the graph information from Azure SQL. So here I have created the resource group. Under resource group, I'm going to create Microsoft Entra. So I'm trying to find the under authentication Microsoft Entra. Mhm. So I'm going to search the marketplace for Entra, Microsoft Entra ID. As we know, it centralized all our access and authentication requirement. So creating, I have to give the organization name, and I have to give some initial domain. I'll keep the same domain, Azure AD B2C. I'm selecting for Entra ID. I'm running demo at twice the speed. So here I'm creating the Entra ID. So once Microsoft Entra ID service is created, so here's my Microsoft Entra ID. I'm opening B2C tenant client. So here is Azure Active Directory B2C. I need to register an application for which I can take out some information. So I'm setting up a application for authorization. So redirect URL, I'll just give some local host under web. Let me register the application with Entra ID. So Entra ID is the access and authentication hub, and I have set up an application here. I need to copy the client ID and tenant ID. As you guys will see, I will be using that afterwards. So I have to create a secret also. I have to go to uh, certificates and secrets. I will just create a secret. I don't want to delete the secret. I just want to copy the ID and value, because once you create the secret and if you don't copy the value, it's very difficult to get the value back. So in API permissions, I have to set up some permissions. So here I can find out all the user related permissions. So I will just give all the permissions related to user so that my C# client can retrieve this. So I'll just give grant admin consent for demo. So here I have done all the setup. I have set up the Entra ID, registered an application, give the permissions, necessary permission for my console application to work. I'll start a new console application. Let me create a new console project. And some default values, .NET 8.0 I'll be using. So I'm creating a console project. So to query the graph related objects, I have to add the references to identity framework. Let me select the identity. So Azure Identity Framework I'm adding. Also, I would need the identity client that I'm adding to my software, my project, and also the graph, Microsoft Graph. So all the necessary framework has been added to my project. Let me copy this. I have already written code somewhere else. Let me copy that code. Let me little bit take out the comments. So here is the code. I am missing just tenant and client ID. Let me get the client ID and tenant ID. So as I showed you before, I have noted on the tenant ID, and client secret. So this is all the information I need to get the graph objects. So in this demo, I'm just using the user. I'm connecting to my Azure website and just getting the user's information. I'll put a breakpoint and let me run the application. Uh, le, the, Let me step over the users. So I passed the tenant ID, and client server, client secret, and here the user. It was able to retrieve a user. Uh, yeah, under value. So it retrieved my name, Vikas Keni. I'm the only user for the app I have created. So that concludes the demo. Uh, so before I go further, Graph, any question? Santosh, Rakesh, you guys have just joined. I was talking about a little bit about Microsoft Graph, and today demo I have set up as twice the speed. Looks like it's going very fast. So any questions about Microsoft Graph before I go further? Santosh, Rakesh, you guys are mute. I cannot hear you.
Uh, from my side, no, no
Okay,
question. Definitely.
no, okay. So what are the best Microsoft Graph practices are? Use the least privileges. Means whenever the APIs, Graph APIs are trying to get some data from my website, I have to give permission whether this code can access my users, can access my calendar. So that's what you should be using least privilege permissions, and consider the end user and admin experiences, consider multi-tenant applications. So if sometimes the data can be very, very huge, mhm, uh, you need to use pagination, and be careful if you are using data store locally, because means it may get out of the sync, and it should not violate Microsoft API terms of use. So that concluded our graph.